The small town of Pinewood wasn't known for much. It had a main street with shops that closed by 8, a diner where everyone knew your order before you sat down, and a cemetery that had been there longer than anyone could remember. Life moved slowly here, following the rhythm of seasons and small-town traditions. Lisa Harper had lived in Pinewood her whole life. At 32, she worked for the local newspaper, covering town meetings and high school sports. Nothing exciting ever happened in Pinewood. At least, that's what she thought until that cool April evening when her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages. "You need to see this," read a text from her childhood friend Ben, now the deputy sheriff. Cemetery. After dark, Lisa almost ignored it. Ben had a habit of turning nothing into something, and she was tired after covering the town budget meeting. But curiosity got the better of her, as it always did. That's why she became a reporter in the first place. She needed to know the stories behind things. She grabbed her jacket and camera. Spring nights in Pinewood still carried winter's chill. The drive to the cemetery took less than 10 minutes. As she pulled up, she noticed several cars parked along the narrow road, unusual for this time of night. A small crowd had gathered near the back corner of the cemetery, their faces lit by phone screens in the darkness. "What's going on?" Lisa asked, approaching Ben, who stood at the edge of the group. "Look over there," he said, pointing toward an area partially hidden by old oak trees. At first, Lisa didn't see anything unusual, just headstones, shadows, and the outline of the stone angel that had frightened her as a kid. Then she noticed it, a soft blue light coming from between the trees. It wasn't bright or flashy, just a gentle glow that seemed to pulse slightly, like slow breathing. "What is that?" she whispered, though she wasn't sure why she felt the need to lower her voice. "That's what everyone's trying to figure out," Ben replied. "Mrs. Wilson noticed it 2 nights ago when she was visiting her husband's grave. Thought it was kids with flashlights at first, but when she got closer..." Lisa was already walking toward the light, camera ready. The crowd parted to let her through, recognizing her from the newspaper. As she got closer, she could see the source of the glow. A simple grave marker, newer than most in this section of the cemetery. The light seemed to come from within the stone itself, a soft blue that reminded her of the bioluminescent plankton she'd seen once on vacation. The headstone was simple, gray granite with an inscription, "Thomas Eliot, 1896, 2023. Light finds a way." People were keeping a respectful distance, speaking in hushed tones. An older woman clutched her husband's arm, eyes wide with wonder. A teenager was live streaming on his phone, narrating in excited whispers. "Has anyone called the cemetery caretaker?" Lisa asked, turning to Ben. "Already here." He nodded toward Frank Miller, the caretaker for over 20 years, who stood scratching his head and looking as confused as everyone else. "Never seen anything like it," Frank told her when she approached him. "Been here since '99. Seen all sorts of things people leave on graves. Solar lights, wind chimes, those eternal flames that run on batteries. But this is something else. That stone was put in just 3 months ago. Standard granite. Nothing special about it. Do you know anything about him?" Lisa asked, nodding toward the glowing headstone. "Thomas Eliot?" Frank shook his head. "Not local. The arrangements were made by a young woman. His wife, I think. She had specific instructions about the grave marker, but nothing that mentioned whatever this is." Lisa took photos, knowing they wouldn't capture the eerie beauty of the glowing stone. She made notes in her phone, names, dates, quotes from onlookers. This was news. Real news, not the usual lost pets and zoning disputes she covered. By midnight, the crowd had mostly dispersed, leaving just a few dedicated observers, including Lisa. She sat on a nearby bench, watching the gentle blue light and wondering about the man beneath it. Who was Thomas Eliot? What did "light finds a way" mean? And most importantly, why was his grave glowing? The next morning, Lisa was at the newspaper office early, even before her editor Mike showed up. She was already deep into research when he arrived, coffee in hand. "You look like you've been here all night," he commented, peering over her shoulder at her computer screen. "Almost?" she replied, not looking up. "Mike, there's something happening at the cemetery. A grave is glowing." To his credit, Mike didn't laugh or dismiss her. He'd been in journalism long enough to know that strange things sometimes turned out to be the most important stories. "Show me what you've got," he said, pulling up a chair. Lisa had spent hours searching for information about Thomas Elliot. He wasn't from Pinewood, that much was clear. She found his obituary in a Boston newspaper. It was brief, mentioning that he had died after a long illness, survived by his wife Lily and no children. He had been a researcher at a technology company specializing in sustainable energy solutions. Nothing that explained a glowing grave. "I need to find his wife," Lisa said. The obituary mentioned she works for Green Tech Industries in Boston. Mike nodded slowly. This could be something, or it could be nothing. Some kind of chemical reaction in the stone, maybe. But people are talking and we need to be ahead of it. Take a few days, see what you can find out. Lisa didn't waste any time. She called Green Tech Industries that morning, asking for Lily Elliott. The receptionist hesitated before saying Lily wasn't available, but took Lisa's information. By afternoon, Lisa was surprised to receive an email from Lily herself, agreeing to talk but preferring to do so in person. She would be visiting her husband's grave that weekend and suggested they meet then. The 3 days until Saturday felt endless. Lisa returned to the cemetery each night, documenting the glowing grave. The blue light remained constant, neither dimming nor brightening. Word had spread beyond Pinewood, and visitors from neighboring towns began arriving after sunset, creating an impromptu vigil around Thomas Elliot's final resting place. Theories spread just as quickly as the news. Some thought it was an elaborate prank using hidden lights. Others suggested more spiritual explanations. A sign from beyond, a soul too bright to be contained. A local science teacher suggested bioluminescent bacteria, while a conspiracy theorist who called the newspaper office insisted it was radiation from secret government experiments. Lisa listened to all these theories but reserved judgment. She spent her days researching Thomas Elliot's work, learning about sustainable energy and bioluminescence. The more she learned, the more questions she had. Saturday evening arrived with a light drizzle that cleared just before sunset. Lisa arrived at the cemetery early, watching as visitors came and went. The crowd was smaller than previous nights, perhaps due to the rain. She wondered how she would recognize Lily Elliott, having found no photos online. As the sky darkened and the grave began to glow, Lisa noticed a woman approaching from the parking area. She walked with purpose, carrying a small bunch of wildflowers. Unlike the other visitors who gathered in groups and pointed at the glowing stone, she walked directly to it and placed the flowers at its base. She stood there silently, one hand resting on top of the stone, seemingly unbothered by the curious onlookers. Lisa approached slowly, not wanting to intrude on what was clearly a private moment. The woman turned as Lisa neared, as if sensing her presence. She was younger than Lisa had expected, probably in her late 20s with tired eyes that had seen too much for her age. "You must be Lisa," she said. "I'm Lily." They moved away from the crowd, finding a quiet spot under a large maple tree. From there, they could still see the gentle blue glow of Thomas's grave. Lily seemed calm, collected, but Lisa noticed how her eyes kept returning to that blue light. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Lily said, following Lisa's gaze. Tom would have loved knowing that his final project worked. "His final project?" Lisa asked. "You mean the glowing—" That was intentional. Lily smiled slightly. "Yes and no. It was his research, his design, but we never knew for sure if it would work. It was a theory he was developing when he became too sick to continue. I promised him I'd try." As they sat in the growing darkness, the blue glow from Thomas's grave providing just enough light to see each other's faces, Lily began to tell Lisa about a man she had never met. A brilliant mind, a kind heart, and a life cut short far too soon. A man whose last wish was to bring light into the darkness, even after he was gone. And Lisa knew she had found a story that would change everything, not just for her small-town newspaper, but for the countless lives that would be touched by Thomas Elliot's final gift to the world. Lily and Lisa met again the following morning at the small coffee shop on Main Street. Early Sunday meant they had the place mostly to themselves. Just a couple of regulars reading newspapers in the corner, and the sleepy-eyed barista who kept refilling their cups without being asked. Thomas wasn't supposed to make it past his 15th birthday, Lily said, warming her hands around her mug. That's what the doctors told his foster parents when he was 6. Lisa listened quietly, letting Lily tell the story at her own pace. She had her notebook open but hadn't written anything yet. Some stories needed to be heard fully before being put into words. He was born with a rare condition that affects the nervous system, Lily continued. His parents died in a car crash when he was little, and he bounced around the foster system. The thing is, no one really wanted a kid with medical problems. Too expensive, too complicated. Lisa nodded, thinking of her own sister who had adopted 2 children from foster care. The system was broken in so many ways, but Tom never let it define him. He was always the smartest person in any room, but you'd never know it from how he acted. He was quiet, kind. He saw the world differently. Lily pulled out her phone and showed Lisa a photo. The man in the picture had gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a smile that seemed genuinely happy despite the thin frame that spoke of illness. He was sitting on a university campus bench, autumn leaves scattered around his feet, a textbook open on his lap. This was during our second year at MIT, Lily explained. We were both studying engineering. I was drawn to him from the first day of class, but it took me 3 months to get him to talk to me about anything other than circuit designs. Lisa smiled. How did you break through? I found him in the lab late one night. He was working on a project that wasn't for any class. He was trying to develop a material that could convert ambient electromagnetic energy into light. When I asked why, he said, because there are still billions of people living without reliable electricity and everyone deserves light. The coffee shop door chimed as a family walked in, breaking the moment. Lily took a deep breath and continued. His foster parents weren't bad people. They were just unprepared for a child with his needs. But there was one foster home he stayed in for almost 2 years, with a woman named Mrs. Chen. She was a widow who took in sick kids that nobody else wanted. She had been a nurse before retiring. Lily's eyes softened at the memory. Tom said Mrs. Chen was the first person who made him feel like his life wasn't just about waiting to die. She took him to science museums and bought him electronics kits even though she could barely afford it. She's the one who told him, you might not have quantity of life, but you can have quality. Make something that matters. Lisa wrote that down, feeling the weight of those words. Did she know what he became? Lily nodded. She came to our wedding. Died about a year later, cancer. Tom was devastated. That's when his own health really started to decline. They sat in silence for a moment, watching people pass by the window. Normal Sunday morning routines, families heading to church, joggers with their dogs, teenagers sleeping in. Tom's condition affected his mobility first, Lily continued. By our senior year, he was using a wheelchair most days. But his mind? Sharp as ever. He graduated top of our class and got hired immediately by Green Tech. I followed a few months later. Lisa tried to imagine it, being brilliant enough to be recruited by a cutting-edge tech company while fighting a losing battle with your own body. And he kept working on his light project? Always, even as things got worse. The company gave him flexibility to work from home when he needed to. They saw his potential. Lily's voice caught slightly. We all did. After finishing their coffee, they decided to walk. The day was warming up, spring finally pushing winter aside. They ended up at the small town park, sitting on a bench overlooking the duck pond. When Tom was 25, we got married, Lily said, twisting the simple band on her finger. Some people thought I was crazy. Marrying someone who we all knew wouldn't have much time. My own parents tried to talk me out of it. They said I was signing up for heartbreak. What did you tell them? Lisa asked. That some people are worth loving no matter how long you get to keep them? Lily looked out over the water. And I was right. I'd rather have had those few years with Tom than a lifetime with anyone else. Lisa let the words sink in. She thought about her own relationships, how carefully she avoided getting too attached to anyone, how afraid she was of being hurt. Tell me about his work, she said, steering the conversation back to safer ground. The glowing grave, how did that happen? Lily's expression brightened with a hint of pride. Tom was brilliant with materials science. His specialty became photovoltaic compounds that could harness very small amounts of electromagnetic energy, the kind that's all around us from power lines, radio waves, even the Earth's magnetic field. She explained how Thomas had been developing a compound that could store this energy and release it as visible light, not bright enough to read by, but enough to mark pathways or provide safety markers in remote areas without any power infrastructure. Most of his work went to the company, of course, but this particular project was personal to him. He called it his legacy project. Lily's voice grew softer. When the doctors told us he had maybe 6 months left, he worked even harder. He wanted to finish it. They walked back toward the center of town, moving slowly as Lily continued her story. The last few months were difficult. He was in a lot of pain. We tried everything, but nothing really helped except the strongest medications, and those made it hard for him to think clearly. He hated that more than the pain, losing his mind while his body was already failing. Lisa thought about her grandfather's battle with cancer years ago, how the vibrant man she knew had disappeared long before his body gave out. "I'm sorry," she said, knowing how inadequate the words were. One night, about 2 weeks before he died, he had a moment of perfect clarity. The medications wore off just enough, and suddenly he was fully Tom again. He made me promise 2 things. They had reached Lisa's car, but neither made a move to end their conversation. "What did he ask?" Lisa prompted gently when Lily paused. "First, that I wouldn't put my life on hold after he was gone. That I would keep working, keep creating, keep finding joy." Lily smiled sadly. "I'm still working on that one." "And the second promise?" "That I would bury him with his final prototype." He had created this compound, a mixture of rare earth materials, photovoltaic polymers, and some other elements I can't even pronounce. He believed it would work, that it could capture energy from the environment and convert it to light. Indefinitely. Lisa's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "The headstone," Lily nodded. "I had it mixed into the concrete of his marker." The cemetery officials weren't thrilled about the non-standard request, but Tom's old professor from MIT vouched that it was environmentally safe. None of us really expected it to work, though. I thought it was just important to him symbolically, to be buried with his life's work. "But it does work," Lisa said softly. "Better than any of us imagined." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Tom always said, 'Light finds a way.' It was his mantra during the darkest days of his illness. Now I understand what he meant." As they prepared to part ways, Lily handed Lisa a small flash drive. "These are Tom's research notes, some photos, our story. If you're going to write about him, I want you to have the whole picture." He would have liked knowing that his work might inspire others. Lisa took it carefully, understanding the trust being placed in her. "Thank you. I'll do his story justice." "I know you will." Lily looked toward the direction of the cemetery, though it wasn't visible from where they stood. "Just remember, this isn't just about a glowing grave or scientific discovery. It's about a boy who was told he wouldn't live to adulthood, who spent every day he was given trying to bring light to others." As Lisa drove home, the flash drive secure in her bag, she thought about Thomas Elliot, a man she had never met but whose story was already changing how she saw the world. A man who, despite knowing his own light would be extinguished too soon, had dedicated his life to creating light for others. She knew there was much more to learn about him, about his work, and about the glowing grave that was now drawing visitors from farther and farther away. But one thing was already clear: Thomas Elliot's story deserved to be told. Back at her small apartment, Lisa plugged the flash drive into her laptop. She made a cup of tea and settled at her desk, ready to dive deeper into Thomas Elliot's life. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping gently against her windows as if keeping time with her thoughts. The drive contained several folders: research notes, photos, letters, and one simply labeled "For After." Lisa opened the photos first, wanting to see the man behind the story. There were hundreds of images spanning years. Thomas as a teenager, thin but standing tall next to an older Asian woman Lisa assumed was Mrs. Chen. Thomas and Lily in college, sitting on the steps of an impressive building, textbooks spread around them. Thomas in a lab coat focused intently on something just out of frame. Thomas and Lily on their wedding day, his wheelchair decorated with white flowers, both of them laughing. Lisa found herself smiling, then blinking back tears. The photos told a story of a life lived fully despite limitations. In nearly every image, Thomas was either working on something or looking at Lily with obvious love. Even in the later photos, when his illness had clearly taken a toll, his eyes remained bright and determined. She moved on to the research notes, most of which were beyond her understanding. Pages of chemical formulas, diagrams of molecular structures, and technical terms she'd need to look up. But between the science were personal notes that gave her glimpses into Thomas's mind. Failed again. Mrs. C would say, "Keep going. One more try tomorrow." L brought dinner to the lab. Reminded me there's more to life than work. She's always right. Pain worse today. Can't hold a pencil. Using voice notes instead. Won't stop now. Too close. Lisa found herself drawn to the letters folder. It contained correspondence between Thomas and various people. Professors, colleagues, doctors. But most were letters to Lily, written during times when his pain medications made speaking difficult. They were love letters, progress reports, and sometimes just simple notes of gratitude. One in particular caught her attention, dated about a month before he died. "My Lily, the doctors say weeks, not months. I'm not afraid, but I am sad. Sad for the years we won't have, the things we won't do together. Sad that I couldn't finish what I started. But mostly grateful. For you, for the time I've had, so much more than they predicted when I was a kid. And for the chance to make something that might matter. Don't forget our promise. Your life doesn't end when mine does. You'll carry light forward in your own way. Always yours, Tom." Lisa wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. She felt the weight of responsibility in telling this story right. This wasn't just about a curious, glowing grave. It was about love, purpose, and legacy. She hesitated before opening the For After folder. It felt intensely private. Yet Lily had given her the drive, knowing everything it contained. Inside was a video file titled Final Project Notes with a date just 3 days before Thomas died. Lisa clicked play. Thomas appeared on screen, propped up in a hospital bed at home. He looked exhausted, his face gaunt and his hands shaky, but his eyes were clear and focused. He adjusted his glasses and spoke directly to the camera. "If you're watching this, I'm gone and something unexpected has happened." His voice was weak but steady. "Lily, if this is you, I love you and I hope you're doing okay. If this is someone else," he smiled slightly, "then I guess my little experiment worked better than anyone anticipated." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. It was as if he was speaking directly to her, somehow knowing his grave would draw attention. "Let me explain what I've been working on," he continued. "The simplest version is this. I've developed a compound that can harvest small amounts of electromagnetic energy from the environment, the kind that's all around us from power lines, radio signals, even the Earth's magnetic field, and convert it to visible light." He coughed, took a sip of water, and continued. "The complex version involves quantum photovoltaic properties and a self-sustaining reaction that, well, the details are in my notes. What matters is that this technology could help people in remote areas without access to electricity. A marker that glows permanently without batteries or solar panels could guide people home in the dark, or mark clean water sources, or simply provide comfort." Thomas shifted in his bed, wincing slightly. "My time ran out before I could complete the testing. My final prototype is theoretical at best, but Lily has promised to..." He smiled again. "Well, let's just say if you're seeing a strange blue glow somewhere, then she kept her promise. And my formula worked." The video continued for another 20 minutes as Thomas explained the technical aspects of his work. Despite his condition, his mind remained sharp, his passion for the project evident in how his energy seemed to return when discussing the science. The following morning, Lisa returned to the cemetery. It was early, the sun just rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. There were no other visitors yet, and in the daylight, Thomas's grave looked ordinary, just a simple gray stone with his name, dates, and the inscription, "Light finds a way." Lisa sat on the damp grass beside it, notebook in hand. She had come to write, but instead found herself just sitting in silence, thinking about everything she had learned. About a boy given a death sentence who refused to simply wait for it. About a love story cut short but lived fully. About a man who spent his final days trying to create light for others. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mike, her editor. "How's the glowing grave story coming?" People are asking. News had spread beyond their small town. A video someone had posted online had gone viral, and Lisa had received calls from reporters at bigger papers asking what she knew. Even a TV crew from the nearest city was planning to visit. She hadn't shared the full story yet, wanting to get it right. Wanting to do justice to Thomas's life, not just focus on the curiosity of his death. "Meeting with the university professor today," she texted back. "Stories bigger than we thought." After her cemetery visit, Lisa drove to the state university an hour away. Dr. Alan Whitaker, a professor of material science, had agreed to meet with her after she'd reached out explaining the situation. She had brought copies of Thomas's research notes with Lily's permission. Dr. Whitaker was an older man with wild gray hair and the energetic manner of someone who loved his work. His office was cluttered with books, papers, and strange-looking equipment. He examined the notes with growing excitement. "This is remarkable," he said, flipping through the pages. "If what you're describing is accurate, and this material is actually producing sustained bioluminescence from ambient electromagnetic energy." He looked up at Lisa. This young man was working on something truly groundbreaking. "So it's real?" Lisa asked. "The science is sound?" "In theory, yes. But developing a compound that could actually do this..." He shook his head in wonder. "Many have tried. The applications would be enormous, not just for lighting, but for energy harvesting in general. Would you be willing to come see it?" Lisa asked. "To verify what's happening?" Dr. Whitaker agreed immediately. His scientific curiosity piqued. They arranged for him to visit the cemetery that evening. As Lisa drove back to Pinewood, she thought about how quickly life could change. A week ago, she had been covering town meetings and school board disputes, feeling stuck in a job that seemed to be going nowhere. Now she was in the middle of a story that combined science, love, and what might be a significant discovery. She called Lily, who had returned to Boston but was planning to come back to Pinewood the following weekend. "The professor thinks Tom's work could be important," Lisa told her. "Really important?" "He always thought it would be," Lily replied, her voice a mixture of pride and sadness. "He just didn't think he'd have to die to prove it." When Lisa arrived at the cemetery that evening, she was shocked by what she found. The crowd had grown significantly. At least 50 people stood around Thomas's grave, which glowed with its steady blue light in the gathering darkness. Someone had placed flowers all around it. A woman was openly weeping. 2 men who looked like scientists were taking readings with handheld devices. As Lisa made her way through the crowd, she overheard snippets of conversation. "They say he knew he was dying and created this as his legacy. I heard it's some kind of miracle. My cousin works in energy research and says this could change everything." Stories had begun to spread, facts mixing with speculation and wonder. Thomas Elliot was becoming a legend. Lisa felt a sudden urgency to share the true story, not just about the glowing grave, but about the man who had created it and the love that had made it possible. She spotted Dr. Whitaker at the edge of the crowd, staring at the glowing stone with an expression of absolute wonder on his face. When he saw Lisa, he motioned her over excitedly. "It's real," he said, his voice hushed. "It's actually real. That young man did what many of us have only theorized about." He shook his head in amazement, and to think his work might have gone unnoticed if not for this final demonstration. Lisa looked at the growing crowd, at the glowing stone, and at the night sky above. Somewhere up there, she thought, Thomas Elliot might be watching, pleased that his light had found its way into the world after all. By the end of the week, Pinewood had transformed. The small town that rarely saw visitors now had cars with license plates from all over the state filling its streets. The local diner stayed open late to accommodate the crowds. The one motel had no vacancies, and some residents had begun renting spare rooms to visitors. Lisa's first article about Thomas Elliot and his glowing grave had been published in the Pinewood Gazette, but it had quickly been picked up by larger newspapers. Her phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, scientists, and curious people from around the country. "I never expected this," she told Ben as they watched the steady stream of people making their way to the cemetery. "I thought it would be a local interest story at best." "You've put our town on the map," Ben replied, sipping his coffee. They were sitting at the window table in the diner, watching the unusual bustle on Main Street. "I didn't do anything," Lisa said. "Thomas Elliot did. I just told his story, and what a story it had become." After Dr. Whitaker's visit, word had spread through scientific circles about the potential breakthrough in Thomas's work. A team from MIT was scheduled to arrive the following day to study the glowing grave and review his research notes. Green Tech Industries, where Thomas and Lily had worked, had issued a statement expressing pride in their former employee's innovation and promising to explore applications of his discovery. But amid all the excitement, Lisa found herself thinking most about Lily. How was she handling the sudden attention on her late husband? Was this healing or painful for her? Lisa got her answer that afternoon when Lily called. "It's too much," Lily said, her voice strained. "The reporters at my apartment building, the emails, the calls. Everyone wants a piece of Tom now that he's gone." "I'm so sorry," Lisa said, feeling partly responsible. "I never meant for this to happen." "It's not your fault," Lily assured her. "You told his story beautifully. But now everyone else is trying to claim him. The university where he studied, the company where he worked. Even the foster care system is putting out press releases about their successful alumni." The bitterness in her voice was clear. They didn't care about him when he was sick and struggling. They didn't sit with him through the pain. Lisa understood her anger. "What can I do?" "I need to come back to Pinewood," Lily said. "But I can't face all those people alone. Will you help me?" "Of course," Lisa promised. "When do you arrive?" "Tomorrow morning. And Lisa, there's something else. Something Tom left that I haven't shared yet. Something important." The next day, Lisa picked Lily up from the bus station. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair hastily pulled back. She carried only a small backpack and a metal case about the size of a shoebox. "Thank you for coming," Lily said as they drove toward Lisa's apartment. They had agreed Lily would stay there rather than at the crowded motel where she'd be easily recognized. "What's in the case?" Lisa asked, nodding toward the metal box Lily held tightly on her lap. "The rest of Tom's legacy," Lily answered quietly. "His final gift." At the apartment, after a cup of tea and some much-needed quiet, Lily opened the case. Inside was a collection of small glass vials filled with a pale blue powder, carefully packed in protective foam along with a notebook and a sealed envelope. "This is it," Lily said, her fingers hovering over the vials. "The rest of Tom's formula. The complete version of what's making his grave glow." Lisa stared at the unassuming powder. "It doesn't look like much." "Neither did penicillin, probably," Lily said with a small smile. "But this could change lives. Tom created enough samples for testing before he died, and left complete instructions." She picked up the notebook. "His final month, when he could barely hold a pen, he dictated every detail to me. Every measurement, every process. What are you going to do with it?" Lily sighed. "That's what I've been struggling with. Companies are already contacting me, offering to buy the rights. The university wants to claim it since some of his early research was done there. GreenTech says they own it because he was their employee." "What would Thomas want?" Lisa asked gently. "He wanted it to help people," Lily said without hesitation. "Not to make anyone rich, not to become a corporate patent that sits unused because it's not profitable enough. He wanted it out in the world, making a difference." She picked up the sealed envelope. "This is for Dr. Whitaker. Tom knew his work might be important someday, and he prepared for it. He wrote this letter to be delivered to a respected scientist who could help implement his vision properly." Lisa thought of the growing crowd at the cemetery, the scientists taking readings, the news vans parked along the quiet streets of Pinewood. "Things are moving quickly. What's your plan?" "I need to talk to Dr. Whitaker first," Lily said. "Tom trusted him, or at least his reputation. Then I want to make a public statement. Tell everyone the full story on my terms. But I need your help to arrange it." The following morning, they met with Dr. Whitaker in Lisa's apartment, away from the crowds and cameras. The professor read Thomas's letter in silence, his expression growing more serious with each page. "This is extraordinary," he finally said, looking up at Lily. "Your husband wasn't just brilliant, he was visionary. Can you help make it happen?" Lily asked. "Can you honor his wishes?" Dr. Whitaker nodded slowly. "It won't be easy. There will be resistance. Legal challenges, perhaps. But yes, I believe we can." "What exactly did Thomas ask for?" Lisa inquired, notebook ready. Lily and Dr. Whitaker exchanged a glance, and Lily nodded, giving permission to share. "Thomas Elliot developed a technology that could change how we think about energy harvesting," Dr. Whitaker explained. "But he didn't want it patented or controlled by any single entity. He's requesting an open-source approach, making his formula freely available to researchers worldwide, with the stipulation that any resulting technology must be accessible to developing regions at minimal cost." Lisa wrote quickly, understanding the significance. "That's not how things usually work, no," Dr. Whitaker agreed. "It's not. But it's the right thing. This young man could have sold this technology for millions, secured his wife's future, Instead, he's chosen to give it to the world. Lily's eyes shone with unshed tears. That was Tom, always thinking of others even at the end. They spent hours planning how to move forward. Dr. Whitaker would assemble a team of independent researchers to verify Thomas's work. Lily would make a public statement about her husband's wishes. Lisa would continue to tell the story, ensuring the world knew not just about the glowing grave, but about the man who had created it and his vision for how his discovery should be used. That evening, they visited the cemetery together. The crowd had grown even larger, with people coming from neighboring states now. Some treated it like a tourist attraction, taking selfies with the glowing grave. Others approached with reverence, leaving flowers or standing in quiet contemplation. As Lily approached her husband's grave, the crowd seemed to sense who she was and parted silently, creating a path. Lisa and Dr. Whitaker followed a few steps behind, giving her space but providing support with their presence. Lily knelt beside the glowing stone, placing her hand on it as she had done before. The blue light illuminated her face, catching the tears that now fell freely. "I'm keeping our promise, Tom," she whispered, though Lisa was close enough to hear. "Your light is finding its way." Someone in the crowd recognized Lily and a murmur spread. Soon people were pressing closer, phones raised to capture the moment. Lisa felt protective anger rising, but before she could intervene, Dr. Whitaker stepped forward. "Please," he said, his authoritative voice carrying across the suddenly quiet cemetery, "show some respect. This is not a spectacle. This is a widow visiting her husband's grave." The crowd backed away, lowering their phones. In the space that formed around Lily, Lisa saw not just grief but strength in her posture. When Lily finally stood and turned to face the onlookers, her eyes were clear and determined. "My husband's name was Thomas Elliot," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "He was more than this glowing stone. He was a person who suffered, who loved, who worked to make the world better. Tomorrow I'll share his story and his final wishes. For tonight I ask that you remember there's a person beneath this marker, a person who mattered." The crowd remained silent as Lily walked away, head high, Lisa and Dr. Whitaker flanking her protectively. As they reached the cemetery gate, Lisa looked back at the scene. The glowing blue grave standing out in the darkness, surrounded by a hushed crowd that seemed, at least for the moment, to understand that they were witnessing something more profound than a scientific curiosity. They were witnessing a love story, a legacy, and the beginning of a light that would spread far beyond this small-town cemetery. The town hall had never been so full. People stood along the walls, sat on the floor, and crowded the doorways. Camera crews from 3 different news stations had set up their equipment, and reporters from newspapers across the country filled the first 2 rows. The mayor of Pinewood, unused to such attention, had nervously welcomed everyone before stepping aside. Now Lily stood at the podium, looking surprisingly calm despite the crowd. Lisa sat nearby, along with Dr. Whitaker and 2 other scientists who had been examining Thomas's research. Behind them was a table covered with a cloth, hiding something the public hadn't seen yet. "My husband believed that light belongs to everyone," Lily began, her voice soft but clear in the hushed room. "He grew up in darkness, both literally, in homes that sometimes couldn't afford electricity, and figuratively facing a disease that was slowly taking his life. Creating light became his purpose." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces watching her intently. "Thomas was given a death sentence when he was 6 years old. Doctors said he wouldn't live past 15. He made it to 27. He used those extra years that were often filled with pain and limitation, to develop something that could help others." Lisa watched the crowd as Lily spoke. People were leaning forward, hanging on every word. Even the journalists who had likely covered hundreds of press conferences seemed moved. "By now, many of you have visited my husband's grave. You've seen the blue light that glows without batteries, without solar panels, without any conventional power source. What you're seeing is Thomas's final project, a compound that harvests ambient electromagnetic energy from the environment and converts it to visible light." Dr. Whitaker stepped forward when Lily nodded to him. After examining Mr. Elliott's research and conducting preliminary tests on samples he prepared before his death, "I can confirm that his technology represents a significant breakthrough in energy harvesting," the professor stated. "The implications for sustainable lighting in regions without electricity infrastructure are enormous. He went on to explain the science in simplified terms that most people could understand. How Thomas had combined rare earth materials with specially engineered polymers to create a compound that could capture the tiny amounts of electromagnetic energy present in the environment from power lines, radio waves, and even the Earth's magnetic field. When he finished, Lily returned to the podium. Thomas left complete instructions for his formula, along with his wishes for how it should be used. She took a deep breath. He wanted this technology to be open source, freely available to researchers and developers worldwide, with the stipulation that any resulting products must be made accessible to developing regions at minimal cost. A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't how valuable technologies were usually handled. Some will say this is naive, Lily continued. Several companies have already approached me with offers to buy the rights. But Thomas believed that light is a basic human need, not a luxury. His final wish was to share that light with those who need it most. She gestured to Lisa, who stood and joined her at the podium. Over the past 2 weeks, I've had the privilege of learning about Thomas Elliot. Not just the scientist who created something remarkable, but the person who faced incredible challenges with grace and purpose, Lisa said. With Lily's permission, I've written his full story, which will be published tomorrow. But today, we want to show you something else Thomas created. Together, they walked to the covered table and pulled away the cloth, revealing what looked like ordinary stones of various sizes. Lily picked one up, a smooth river rock that fit in the palm of her hand. These appear ordinary in daylight, she said, then nodded to someone at the back of the room. The lights went out, and gasps filled the dark space as the stones began to glow with the same soft blue light as Thomas's grave. Thomas created these in his final weeks, Lily explained in the blue-lit darkness. Pathway markers that never need replacing or recharging. Imagine them lining routes to clean water sources in remote villages, marking evacuation paths during emergencies when power fails, providing gentle light in homes where children currently can't read after sunset because there's no electricity. When the lights came back on, the impact of the demonstration was clear on people's faces. This wasn't just a curiosity anymore. It was something that could change lives. In memory of my husband, I'm establishing the Thomas Elliot Light Foundation, Lily announced. With the help of Dr. Whitaker and a team of independent scientists, we'll continue Thomas's work and fulfill his vision of bringing light to places of darkness. The press conference continued with questions from reporters and more detailed explanations from the scientists. Lisa watched Lily handle it all with a grace that seemed beyond her years, speaking with conviction about Thomas's vision and deflecting attempts to sensationalize the story. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed and the TV crews packed up their equipment, Lily, Lisa, and Dr. Whitaker sat in the now quiet town hall, experiencing a moment of calm after weeks of growing chaos. You did beautifully, Lisa told Lily. Thomas would be so proud. I hope so, Lily said, looking tired but relieved. This was the easy part, though. Actually making his vision happen, that's the real challenge. Dr. Whitaker nodded solemnly. There will be resistance. Patent laws, corporate interests, practical challenges of implementation. But we have something powerful on our side. What's that? Lisa asked. A good story, he said simply. People respond to stories more than they do to facts or figures. And Thomas's story is compelling. A young man racing against time to create light for others even as his own light was fading. Lisa thought about her article, scheduled to be published the next day. She had written and rewritten it countless times, trying to capture not just the scientific breakthrough but the human story behind it. Thomas's struggle with his illness, his relationship with Lily, his determination to use whatever time he had to create something meaningful. The world needs more stories like this, she said, especially now. 6 months later, Lisa stood in a small village in Kenya, watching as children placed glowing blue stones along the path leading to their school. A local teacher explained how the children now had light to read by in the evenings, how the path markers made it safer to walk to the water pump at night, how something as simple as reliable light had changed their daily lives. Lisa took photos and notes, just as she had that first night in the Pinewood Cemetery. But now she was documenting not just a curious phenomenon but the beginning of Thomas Elliot's true legacy. The Thomas Elliot Light Foundation had faced challenges, as Dr. Whitaker had predicted. Corporate lawyers had tried to block the open-source release of the formula. Questions about safety and environmental impact had been raised. But public support had been overwhelming, partly due to Lisa's original article that had gone viral online and been translated into dozens of languages. Funding had poured in from individuals moved by Thomas's story. Scientists volunteered their time to improve the formula. Manufacturers agreed to produce the glowing stones at cost. And now, less than a year after Thomas's death, his light was spreading around the world. Lily had traveled to Kenya too, but today she was meeting with government officials in the capital about expanding the program to more remote regions. She had transformed from a grieving widow to the passionate executive director of the foundation, carrying forward her husband's vision with remarkable effectiveness. As the sun set over the village, the blue stones began to glow more visibly. Lisa sat with the children as they told her what the lights meant to them. One boy said the blue glow reminded him of the stars, but better because they were closer and showed the way home. A girl said she wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. Later that night, Lisa called Ben back in Pinewood. The small town had settled back into its usual rhythm after the initial excitement, though tourists still came regularly to visit the glowing grave. The cemetery had installed a small plaque explaining the science behind the phenomenon and the story of the man who created it. "How's Africa?" Ben asked. "Beautiful," Lisa replied, "and Thomas's lights are everywhere. You should see the children's faces when they light up at night." "The mayor's talking about putting up a statue of him in the town square," Ben said with a laugh. From unknown visitor to town hero in less than a year. After the call, Lisa sat outside her guest house looking up at the stars that seemed so much brighter here, away from city lights. She thought about how a single grave in a small-town cemetery had led her here, thousands of miles from home, documenting a story that was still unfolding. She thought about Thomas Eliot, who never got to see his work change lives but somehow knew it would. She thought about Lily, channeling grief into purpose, and she thought about light, how it could come from the most unexpected places, even from a grave, even from loss. In her years as a journalist, Lisa had written hundreds of stories, but she knew this one would stay with her forever. The story of a man who, facing darkness, had chosen to create light not just for himself, but for others. A light that would continue to glow long after he was gone. Thomas Eliot's headstone had said it perfectly. Light finds a way.